What's up? Welcome in. It is Friday. Congratulate the hell out of yourselves because you made it here. We're almost at the beginning of March Madness, but we're almost into the thick of college basketball championship week. We've got an NHL trade deadline that has been interesting to follow, and I don't even know what to do with this. I literally, and I'm not kidding you, because I had to sit here for a couple minutes and stop myself from laughing because of the last move that I saw, the most recent move. There's been plenty of stuff. Washington continues to gut the remnants of championships past. And now, if I remember correctly, there's only 2 guys left. We'll get into that. Set the table for a huge weekend of regular season finales in college basketball. Keep you apprised as to what's going on in the early stages of championship week. We've already seen a couple of buzzer beaters. Apparently they're trying out new baseballs in the Cactus League yesterday. So there's a million different places we can go here. And I love it. And we made it. We got to Friday. And that's an accomplishment. You know, I'm kind of missing my guys today, because today would be hilarious. You know, we've been missing Vegas Mac for a couple days. He'll be back with us next week. You know, we're all trying to get everything in order before we get to our 2 favorite shows of the year, where we look at the March Madness brackets and make our picks, and everybody fills out their brackets in their office pools, and Sally in accounting, who picks by mascots, takes home the prize every year, because that's how it happens. Plenty of fun stuff coming up. So if you're watching along, feel free to comment along. Get as many of them up on the screen as I can. I'm still trying to put myself together here, because you know, yesterday it was get somebody that loves you as much as LTAR loves Mark Stone. Today, I'm going to try not to sing to you, but the song's going to pop into my head. But of course, as customary on this program on Fridays, follow us on all of our social channels, at Mike Arana Show, everywhere but Snapchat, because we're not 12 and Snapchat sucks, including our new and improved, even sexier Facebook page. If you know, you know there. But again, it's Friday. Accomplishing the little things in life, they need to be celebrated. So this one's for everybody out there. Make sure you do this every freaking Friday, especially if you're one of the people like I used to be at work on Fridays, literally going through the motions and making my Friday night bets and setting up my, what am I going to watch this weekend? I got you. So, like, you know, put it on in your headphones. Let it go. I'll take you through the better part of the next hour. We'll get you through. This one's for everybody out there, because we need to celebrate little things. Because in just a matter of days, we're going to be screaming and yelling at our TVs for all different reasons. So, the customary round of applause on a Friday there. We're going to start with the NHL trade deadline, because there's no way I cannot start with the NHL trade deadline after this guy basically made me late for my own show today, because I couldn't stop laughing. And to give him credit, he beat me to it in our group message here. Corey Perry is on the move again. I know that's shocking, right? What's not good, if you're a fan of this particular team, is he's headed back to the Tampa Bay Lightning for a 2nd round pick. Corey Perry have pictures of everybody's mom in the NHL? Why this guy gets moved and I have to watch him lose the Stanley Cup final every year, it's partially enjoyable to me, but I don't get it, man. You know, we talked about the Will Smith theory a bunch of times in baseball. Like, if you had a Will Smith, you were a shoo-in to get to the World Series. You were a shoo-in to win the World Series. Well, the Corey Perry thing affects everybody it comes across. Let's just leave it at that. He is headed back to the Lightning from the LA Kings, who seemingly are going absolutely nowhere. So I'm not shocked to see him moved, but I'll quote T. And yesterday T was working the phones for us. He's as dialed in when it comes to hockey as anybody I've ever met. You can bet yourselves now that Tampa Bay does not win the Stanley Cup. So we've got plenty of fun stuff going on. Obviously a massive game on the ice tonight with the Stars and the Avalanche. Can't wait to see that one. Plenty of guys on the move. We in looking at this, we talked about it yesterday, and I would classify still this as a little bit of a disappointing NHL trade deadline, but understandable. And the biggest thing we talked about yesterday, and we've mentioned this a couple of different times here over the last couple of weeks, there's so many teams in the mix this year still, and we're not really sure which teams are going to do which things. So, on top of that, you've got a team like Florida, who is not used to fielding calls to send players out. Las Vegas in their situation and their struggles in trying to keep their team healthy. And then we've got new teams that are being very active, have been active. A new team on the rise, and I'm going to save this debate for next week, but I'll give you my 2 cents on it right now. There's a lot of people hammering the Pacific Division because the entire Pacific Division would not make the playoffs in the East. And I don't know if that's a fair assessment of what's going on in the Pacific Division right now. But Anaheim, they're not wasting any time. They see their opportunity. Hey, Ducks fans, remember when I said Joel Quenneville was the right guy for you? And I got very well-worded messages to paraphrase that I'm a bumbling idiot? We didn't want Quenneville from Ducks fans? Seems like it's worked out pretty well, and it seems like they're not going to take their foot off the gas because they get one of the big coups, if you will, at the deadline, John Carlson, last night from the Anaheim Ducks. And Washington continues to do what they've been doing, and it makes a lot of sense. For Anaheim, it makes a hell of a lot of sense, too. Minnesota, my team, I think, can actually not only get out of the first round this year, is a sneaky good pick to maybe at least play for a cup this year. Well, they go out today, and they make a move. And now the Foligno brothers are playing together in Minnesota. I think that's a tremendous move for a Wild team that's already been making moves. And, it's good for them. Right now, again, they've got to get out of the first round of the playoffs. I get it. It's going to be in their heads, but look at what they're doing. So you got the Foligno brothers playing together. Jeff Petrie, they picked him up from Florida in exchange for a conditional 7th. In talking about back to the Pacific Division here for a second, and T's point yesterday that he brought up is one of the teams that is really kind of the fly in the ointment, if you will, is the Sharks. Have they been making moves? Well, not really. They're just keeping guys. So we saw him with Kiefer Sherwood was another guy that was supposed to be traded if the Sharks couldn't sign him to a contract. They gave him a 5-year extension. He's having a career year. And then today they lock up Alex Nedeljkovic, with a 2-year extension. That was something that, we were kind of talking about yesterday as well. You've got Askarov there. What do they do with Nedeljkovic? Well, there's your answer. We'll get to Evgeny Malkin slashed to the face yesterday. Freaking garbage if you didn't see that. Connor Garland. He's headed to Columbus from Vancouver. It's been slower than I thought. A little more activity today, but we're sitting here, and again, I'm trying to get as many of these up as I can with us coming right up against the horn, if you will. But there's guys that haven't been moved yet that we thought were going to be moved. And so far, Dougie Hamilton hasn't been moved yet. Again, I'll try and keep you up to date as best I can, rolling solo today. But back to the Ducks, as I'm all over the board here. Ryan Poling, a 4-year extension with the Ducks. So I think we're in for a frenzied finish down the stretch here. I can't wait. You know, the Stanley Cup playoffs are always exciting. I think this year they're going to be ridiculously exciting. Mac's going to have his Mac 5 hockey rankings up to date for us. If I remember correctly, that should be up here just a little bit after the show today. Actually, it's this evening, right about puck drop for the Stars and Avalanche tonight. But that's also coming up as well. So I think we're in for a hell of a finish, a hell of a ride down the stretch here in the NHL. I think that race for the wild card spots in the Western Conference is going to be incredible with the teams that are in that mix right now. It's Utah and Seattle. San Jose 3 points out. Los Angeles 3 points out. Nashville, who's been playing a lot better as of late, they're 3 points out. Winnipeg's got some work to do. And we look at, I mean, to go over the Eastern Conference, it's the same thing. You got Montreal and Boston in those 2 wild card spots. Columbus, 1 point behind Boston, is another team we talked about, another team that's making moves. Buffalo is now tied with Tampa for the top spot in the Atlantic, 4 points behind Mac's Carolina Hurricanes. And the Penguins, and I mentioned it. How long are the Penguins going to be without Evgeny Malkin now after that nonsense from last night? I mean, I was watching the game, and I'm still kind of mind blown by it. If you missed it, he got a 5-minute major for slashing Rasmus Dahlin of the Sabres in the second period, basically in the head. Kind of caught him up in this general direction up here. Dan Muse didn't make a comment after the game on it, and you know, Erik Karlsson comes out and he says hopefully he served his time Thursday and that's it. He's a big part of this team. He's been playing great hockey. Yeah, having him down in the position that the Penguins were in, and we've talked about the Penguins a lot, like they're playing better than I think any of us thought they were going to play, but tied with the Islanders right now at 75 points, and then Columbus, as I just mentioned, not far behind them. Detroit's right in that mix as well. I mean, it's kind of a crowded spot there also. You know, I think we're seeing a little more separation in the East as far as those final spots go than the West. I think the West, that race for the wild card spot is going to be very interesting down the stretch here. Obviously, somebody's going to end up being the sacrificial lamb for Colorado. Colorado, who's been kind of quiet here. And when you're as good as Colorado, I mean, there's not a whole lot that you really need to do. But the teams around them, I just talked about Minnesota. Dallas, they picked up Michael Bunting from Nashville as Nashville continues to move people off of that roster there. So the other teams, the teams trying to catch them, specifically in their division, that division's been fantastic this year. Everybody's making moves. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how all that goes down. I'm going to try and get you anything that comes in last minute here as best that I can. NFL news, the Raiders, I don't think this is a shock. We've talked about them a lot. Barring a trade, which isn't going to happen, we'll be releasing Geno Smith as they move into their new regime. Whether you know exactly who's calling all the shots, we know who's calling all the shots. But is that creating enough of a disjointed organization to take the quote directly about Max Crosby's situation there? We'll figure that out. The Raiders will open up $8 million in salary cap space. They'll take on $18.5 million in dead money. So, you know, it'll be interesting. Taylor Decker, the longest tenured Lion, he's asked for his release. I'm very intrigued by what happens to the Lions here as we get into the new NFL calendar year, if you will. Because we see them ship off David Montgomery. Decker wants out. You know, the expectations in Detroit immensely high. And unfortunately, as we saw at the end of last season, Dan Campbell's quote from when they lost the NFC Championship game popped up at the end of last season. You don't know if you're ever going to get back. You don't know if anything's going to seismically change your organization for a team that's been so bad for so long. Again, I think if you polled most NFL fans, let's say you polled 250 NFL fans, not the Super Bowl you think is going to happen, the Super Bowl you would love to see happen, I think most of your answers would be Detroit and Buffalo. So I'm very interested to see what happens with them. You got Roz helping me out today. I appreciate that. Timothy Liljegren traded to the Caps. The Sharks' return not yet announced. Mike Greer. He's let's see who he tries to fleece with that one. But there's a move, speaking of the Pacific Division, according to sources, our sources on the screen there. So shout out, you got Roz. Appreciate that. The Bills, we talked about them yesterday, picking up DJ Moore. Well, today, releasing Taron Johnson and Curtis Samuel. Obviously, those are money moves. They're going to save over just just under $8 million in cap space. $6 million from Samuel, 1.9 from Johnson. The team will not be designating Johnson as a post-June 1st release, according to sources. If they had done so, the Bills would have saved almost $7 million more. So DJ Moore in, Taron Johnson, Curtis Samuel out. I think that obviously makes a lot of sense. Danielle Hunter and the Texans. This was a move from yesterday, a one-year deal, $40 million. I think that Houston, and I mentioned them specifically the other day, they're another intriguing team to watch here. Because of the C.J. Stroud situation, they bring in David Montgomery, but we know they have to do something to that offensive line, or we're not going to know if C.J. Stroud is actually any good right now. It's hard to be good when you're on your back the entire time. I'm very intrigued by the Texans. I'm very intrigued by the Lions. And again, all that chaos starts underway as of Monday morning. As programming note for us, again, for next week, no show on Tuesday, Wednesday night, and then lunchtime live on Thursday and Friday. Week after that, obviously just the Tuesday and Wednesday shows because March Madness is upon us. We'll get into college basketball here in just a second. But with the new league year starting on Monday, there's a lot of teams. We've talked about Buffalo's need for wide receivers. Well, San Francisco's going to be in that same boat. They've obviously got the elephant that's not in the room in the Brandon Ayuk situation. Jawan Jennings is a free agent. That's a team that desperately needs wide receivers as well. Buffalo makes the first big move as far as wide receivers go. And, we've got a lot of guys that are going to be on the move next week. Kenneth Walker testing the free agent markets. I don't think he leaves Seattle. I think it's the right move for Kenneth Walker. I think it's the right move for the Seahawks. Let him see what his value is, and then get him back. Malik Willis. Would you pay 2 years and $44 million for Malik Willis? Because it sounds like somebody is going to. According to Dan Graziano of ESPN, his projection for Malik Willis's next destination, the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals, who we've heard that maybe Jimmy Garoppolo is on the radar of new Cardinals head coach Mike LaFleur, the younger brother of Matt LaFleur. Apparently, he loves Jimmy Garoppolo. Well, let's be honest. Let's assess the Cardinals situation for what it is. There is talent on that offense. Michael Wilson last year was ridiculous for the Cardinals. We've talked about Trey McBride, and we saw the evolution of Wilson and even more evolution of McBride when Kyler Murray was not on the field. Well, we know Kyler Murray will not be on the field for the Cardinals next year. The Cardinals in seemingly the same spot they are every year. 2 years away from probably being 2 years away. Is Malik Willis the guy you want to bring into that offense if you're the Cardinals on a 2-year, $44 million kind of deal? Probably going to get at least 30 of that guaranteed. Talk about being the right guy on the market at the right time. The Kenny Walker thing in Seattle, I think, is fascinating. Travis Etienne, he's a free agent. Alec Pierce, he's a free agent. Mike Evans, he's a free agent. Rashid Shaheed. A lot of people expect the Washington Commanders to be extremely active in this offseason, especially when it comes to the offensive side of the ball. Graziano's projections for both Kenneth Walker and Rashid Shaheed is that they both end up in Washington with the Commanders. Romeo Doubs, that's another guy that we talked about. I wouldn't hate this. Graziano's projection for Romeo Doubs, San Francisco. I think he would be a really good fit in that offense. I've talked about him a lot, show favorite of ours. I don't think he's ever really been utilized in the right way in Green Bay. So, there's a lot of guys out here. Tyler Lindenbaum, Rasheed Walker, Trey Hendrickson, obviously, Jalen Phillips, Khalil Mack. And I've seen this in a couple of different places. We know one of the other big free agents for the Seahawks is Boye Mafe. And the Seahawks defense is so deep, it's so talented, it's so loaded, most of it young. Boye Mafe is one of those guys. And I know Seattle wants to keep him, but it'll be interesting to see what happens to him. I'm also hearing a lot that Khalil Mack could be a target for the Seahawks if the Chargers don't bring him back. Jim Harbaugh loves Khalil Mack. But from a dollars and cents standpoint, it might not make a ton of sense for them to bring back the 35-year-old. But for a team like Seattle, it probably makes a ton of sense to bring him in. John Franklin Myers of the Broncos, he's a free agent. Devin Lloyd, Quay Walker. There's a lot of great defensive free agents. Jalen Watson, Brian Cook. Then you've got some other interesting situations like Brandon Aubrey. Would you pay Brandon Aubrey $10 million? How valuable is it to have an automatic 60-yard field goal kicker? I don't think Jerry's going to pay him that much money. Wan'Dale Robinson, he's another guy that I'm interested to see kind of what happens in the whole deal with him and the Giants. Remember, his old head coach in New York is now the offensive coordinator in Tennessee under Robert Saleh in Brian Daboll. I think that's a pretty good guess for a landing spot for him. And again, all that stuff's going to get going on Monday. It's going to come in hot and heavy. Perfectly timed here by the NHL and the NFL as well. So plenty of stuff to get to on that as well. Refreshing here the trade tracker in the NHL as we get close to deadline time. The Buffalo Sabres. This is... we talked about the Colin Parayko situation. He said, no, I'd rather stay in hockey hell. St. Louis was on his way to Buffalo. Well, Buffalo fixed that problem as far as acquiring what they needed to, and they get Logan Stanley and Luke Schenn from Winnipeg. This came out actually late last night, so Buffalo doesn't sit idly, if you will, for too long there. I can't wait to see that Buffalo team in the playoffs, man. You want to talk about one of the better sports cities in America? We know, we've seen it with Bills Mafia. I think that place is going to be unhinged with the Sabres in the postseason. Undoubtedly, for me, the best story in the NHL this year. Let's check some baseball stuff. I don't know if they were testing new balls yesterday in the Cactus League or what, but if you're a fan of offensive baseball, the Cactus League was your spot yesterday. Dodgers and Reds, 14-13. Brewers and Rocks, 10-8. Angels and A's, 16-11. Guardians put a 12-3 beatdown on the White Sox. The Rangers, 15-9 over the Royals. But the performance of the day, TJ's favorite team to talk about, the San Diego Padres. 27 runs the Padres put on the Mariners yesterday in a 27-6 victory. They hung a 12 spot in the second inning, 27 runs on 28 hits. The really impressive thing is They scored 27 runs before they recorded 27 outs in this game, being the designated road team in Peoria. I mean, just this box score is insane to look at. Absolutely insane to look at. Home runs yesterday from Andujar, Cronenworth, Ornelas, Schnell, Fermin, Johnson, Merrill, and Song. I mean, this box score reads like a CVS receipt yesterday. So fun times in the Cactus League, without a freaking doubt. Maybe it was new balls. Which is great, because at the beginning of the year, we want to jump on dollar dingers right away, and usually it's not a good thing. Shohei Ohtani hits a grand slam as Japan cruises in the WBC. What the scenes, just absolutely freaking ridiculous in the sellout at the Tokyo Dome, 13-0 as they hammer Taiwan in Pool C of the World Baseball Classic. Their first game of 4 in pool play yesterday. I'm really interested to see how this goes. And, we've all kind of shared our thoughts on it. I'm interested to see, not that I care because they don't line my pockets, but it's always interesting to see where the eyeballs are because, we posted T's thoughts on our social channels yesterday about the timing of the WBC, and he referenced the Hockey World Championships that take place in April and May. And maybe this thing would be better placed being played in October. Well, some of the pushback we got, and I don't think it's unfair criticism, some of the pushback we got as far as our social channels go at Mike Arana Show, everywhere but Snapchat, because we're not 12 and Snapchat sucks. A lot of people said, you're not going to put it in October because you're not going to try and compete with football. Well, there's easy ways to do that. If you really wanted to do this and put it in October and get eyeballs, yes, the World Series is going on, the end of the baseball playoffs are going on, but like to T's point, you've got plenty of guys that are eliminated by that point. Yes, you might not have some of the best players on like your World Series participants and stuff like that. I'm interested to see how this one's received. Coming off of the high of U.S. hockey at the Olympics, I think the timing of it sucks. I really do, because we're not seeing everybody for the U.S. at full go. And it's still early enough in spring training here. I'm interested to see what the returns are on this. Can they ride the hockey high? And you know how it is. I mean, it rallies people. Sports is the ultimate bring people together. Coming in right after the Olympics, is there a carryover of momentum of watching Team USA play? Mac's point, I think, is excellent on the WBC. It's the passion and how much this means to the other countries is why he enjoys it. I'm going to put a couple of the games on. I'm going to try and get into it. Again, it's not my favorite thing. I think the timing of it sucks. I'd rather see an all-star game replaced and a season calendar reconfigured and putting it in the middle of the season. And expand the rosters. I think that's a simple fix. Expand the rosters. I mean, again, the concept of, like, you could see a game where, like, Paul Skeens starts and pitches the first 3 to 4 innings, and Tarek Skubal comes in and pitches, 3 to 4 innings, and then you bring in said closer. Expand the rosters if you have to. I'd rather see it in the middle of the season. Couple of injury notes, more injuries, unfortunately, but as we know, this is not an uncommon thing in spring training. The Astros' Jeremy Pena fractured his fingertip. That sounds uncomfortable as all get out. He's obviously not playing in the WBC. He's going to be reevaluated in 2 weeks. So we'll see what happens there with him. But, we're getting closer and closer to opening day. I know TJ's going to have some thoughts. He had some thoughts the other day. We're going to play part of that back on our social channels. A couple of the teams in the American League as far as divisions go that he likes. Our baseball preview show will be coming up the last week of the month. Again, to be determined whether it's Tuesday the 24th or Wednesday the 25th, while the Giants and Yankees will be playing opening night on Netflix this year. I've already had that conversation with my dad. I've had to pre-prep him that he won't be able to watch the Giants on opening night unless he goes out somewhere. I won't tell you what he said about all these different networks because it's not appropriate. He's not a happy guy. But I like to tell him early so I don't get the phone calls the day of, typically when we're on the air, that, how can I watch the Giants game? Well, subscribe to Netflix. It's hard enough getting my dad to follow us on YouTube. That was an undertaking of all undertakings there. Arnold Palmer Invitational. At least I'm saving some face today. Rory McIlroy, 4 under today, gets to 4 under. So Mac was dominating the top of the board. He still has the guy in first as far as Mike versus Mac goes. It's Minwoo Lee, who's 2 under right now on the course, 5 under overall. Russell Henley, Mac's other pick right behind McIlroy, Mr. Flotation Devices, Victor Hovland, another one of Mac's guys in at even par 72. And I'm not going to talk about Sung Jae Im and Keegan Bradley because I'm not thrilled with them right now. Daniel Berger continues to just ball out. No surprise with them being in Florida. He's 3 under through 14, 12 under overall, outright first place in the tournament. Ludwig Oberg and Sahith Theegala not right behind him. They're at 7 under, so keep you up to date on that one as well. We've got a huge weekend on the college hardwood. We've already got some of the conference tournaments getting going and underway. Top 25 teams in action tonight, St. John's and Seton Hall. Always an interesting one. The Seton Hall team, 20-10. Who knows? If they go on a big enough run here, maybe they get in. I don't think they do, but maybe. And then everybody's favorite team to talk about back in action tonight in the regular season finale. Miami, Ohio, 30-0. And some people are still trying to make the argument that they don't belong in the NCAA tournament unless they run the table and win their conference tournament, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. But I saw an interesting stat the other day, and this is Adam Jaska on X. So if you want some extra drama, since Miami of Ohio is a team that everybody wants to talk about and throw their 2 cents in, it's hard to schedule good teams when good teams don't want to play you. And Sundance Wicks, a guy who people in Arizona are very familiar with, he's the head coach at Wyoming. And he had a lot to say yesterday, and I apologize to the beat reporter for Wyoming basketball because I can't find his synopsis of this. I will try and find it and repost it on our X account. But Sundance Wicks, the head coach of Wyoming, went through a long answer form of why these smaller schools have a hard time getting the bigger schools to schedule them. And the gist of what he said is this. And he's entirely true. It's entirely accurate. Coaches are paranoid. And if you're not a coach that's secure in your contract with your university, which not a lot of coaches are in this day and age of NIL, you're not going to take a chance playing a team that had a very high roster retention rate for them coming into your place and beating you. And he even referenced in his comments, and those of you that are college basketball junkies like we are, you know the lore of John Rothstein, the epitome of brutality when you lose a buy-in game. And because of this day and age in NIL, Wicks went on to say, with coaches being paranoid, if you're not 100% secure in your contract with your university, you're not going to take a chance and go play a team like Miami of Ohio that has all this roster retention coming back. It's not a risk you're going to take. Okay, so is that Miami, Ohio's fault? Because in this day and age of college basketball, they retained a lot of their roster and nobody wanted to play them? No. They're 30-0. How many teams, for those of you out there, have hit this mark? 4. I don't care if you play in a smaller conference or not. Going undefeated in this day and age of college basketball is damn near impossible to do. But here's a little extra drama for you tonight. Playing the game in Athens against their rival Ohio. Ohio is the last team, this comes from Adam Jaska's tweet. Ohio is the last team that stands in Miami's way of a perfect regular season. The Redhawks, Miami of Ohio, for those of you just learning who they are, they have not won in Athens since 2011. That's 14 straight losses. The Redhawks' last win there was a triple overtime thriller, 92-88, where Charlie Coles beat John Groce. Shout out Vegas Mac. Couple other listener comments coming in. Appreciate you guys. Our guy Billy V checking in. Absolutely desperate tonight. I can't wait to see this. And one of the bets I made tonight, and I'm glad I took it when I did because it's gone down from 5.5 to 4.5. Seton Hall at home. And I don't even think they will secure a spot in the dance with this because I still think the Big East is probably only looking at 3 teams. Seton Hall would be the 4th. I think Seton Hall might need this win tonight and a good showing in the Big East tournament. But, I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, and then they threw it right in my face. St. John's has been a little hard for me to gauge this year. We saw them get their asses handed to them by UConn. And then right after that, they were playing Creighton, who had been playing better basketball, and they were 12.5-point favorites. And I took Creighton that day, and they beat the hell out of Creighton. Seton Hall, not an easy place to play. Shaheen Holloway does a fantastic job. I cannot wait to see that game tonight. It's I can't wait till I can do back to the 3-hour Eastern time math here on Sunday. That's a 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Pacific game, 7 o'clock for those of you watching here in Arizona. The game's on FS1 from the Prudential Center in Newark. At the same time is the tip-off from the Convocation Center in Athens, Ohio, with Miami of Ohio looking to get to 31-0 and complete the perfect regular season. They're 5.5 point favorites tonight. It's going to be an interesting one. Got a comment in here on NFL free agency. I'll jump back to that here in a second. Tomorrow, obviously, the schedule loaded for the end of the regular season. Not necessarily loaded because we've got good games. We've got good teams in action against a lot of bad teams. Houston's at Oklahoma State. Can they get a good, solid start to finish game heading into what is going to be a monster Big 12 tournament? Virginia Tech and Virginia. Virginia, last weekend, they were getting a lot of love, and they decided not to show up at Cameron and got their asses kicked by Duke. Not that that's a bad thing. Not that Duke hasn't done that to a lot of teams, but Virginia looked like ass last weekend. It's a game Virginia Tech team. Arkansas on the road at Missouri. We're going to have some thoughts on Arkansas on our social channels tomorrow morning, but that's not an easy place to play. Missouri's already got some big wins at home this year. Be interested to see what happens there. UConn, they're going to beat the living hell out of Marquette because Marquette is terrible. Terrible. That's at the Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee. Tickets as low as $8. That's how bad Marquette is this year at 11-19, 6-13 in the Big East. Shaka Smart, and those of you that have watched this program from day one, I got a chance very early as a young coach to meet Billy Donovan and the Gators staff. Shaka Smart was a part of that group. He is turning into the Dabo Swinney of college basketball because of his refusal to really work the transfer portal, and we're really seeing it this year. That Marquette team is bad. And 2 years ago, if I would have said, it's UConn, it's Marquette, it's the last game of the Big East regular season, it's at the Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee, you weren't getting into the building for as low as $8. That's how bad Marquette is. Arizona State, coming off of a big win over Kansas. They're in Ames at the Hilton Coliseum to take on Iowa State. Kansas State and Kansas. Louisville and Miami. And at 21-9, I'm out on Louisville. I am. There's been too many times here over big games that they've played down the stretch that they just haven't done it for me. They are favored at the Watsco Center in Coral Gables. They are 1.5 point favorites over a 24-6 Miami team that's really damn good. Vanderbilt and Tennessee, middle of the day tomorrow. That's a rematch from a great game that they played a couple of weeks ago in Nashville. This one in Knoxville. Florida and Kentucky. Kentucky, we talked about the comments from Mark Pope the other day. These Tuesday, Saturday turnarounds have been really hard with, the health of our roster right now. Well, Mark, you're going to have to win 5 games in like 5 days to probably cement your status in the NCAA tournament. They're going to get into the tournament, but they're a team that's in grave danger. And again, on Wednesday's show, one of the top things we're going to talk about is the teams going into Selection Sunday, that the placement in their bracket is very important. Kentucky's a team that's in danger of getting bounced in the first round. And they have to play a wagon in Florida who's playing better basketball than anybody right now. Wisconsin and Purdue, two teams, you have no idea what the hell is going to happen in that one. St. Louis, they're at George Mason. Auburn is at Alabama, always a fun one. An Auburn team that has no business in the tournament, but people are going to still pound that drum. I hope Alabama beats the living hell out of them so we can just end this conversation about a 16-14 Auburn team that's 7-10 in the SEC. You want a poster child for why we don't need to expand the NCAA tournament? Auburn's your poster child. Well, they played a tough schedule, and they've sucked through their tough schedule. If Auburn gets into the tournament, you're literally saying, we don't need to expand the NCAA tournament. You're going to get the people on the other side that are going to go, no, we do because we're letting teams. No, just don't put Auburn in. Don't quad 1 me. Don't quad 2 me. Don't strength the record me on Auburn. They're 16-14 and 7-10 in the SEC. They have no business being in the tournament. Alabama can do everybody a lot of favors tomorrow and beat the living hell out of them. I know that'll make our guys Herb and Raj very happy. There's a night game tomorrow that's massively important. And it's Texas Tech at BYU from the Marriott Center. AJ DeBonsa, who now, depending on where you're looking, the projected number 1 pick. But there's a problem. He might not be entering the NBA draft. And we talked about this with BYU and the loss of Richie Saunders. And BYU is a team that doesn't play defense. So if you're looking for a lean from me on tomorrow's game, it's definitely on the over. You know, we talked about this Texas Tech team. You know, they lose Toppin at ASU. Then they go out with a 28-point win, a 12-point win, and a 9-point win. The 9-point win on the road at Hilton last weekend. This is an interesting game. Fran Fraschilla and Boog Shambi on the call. I'd love to see the flight miles that those two have gotten traveling to all the best arenas in the Big 12. I think that's going to be a scene tomorrow night. And it's a huge game for BYU. BYU's 8-9 in the Big 12. 20-10 overall. So do the math there. 8-9 in the Big 12. 20-10 overall. And the knock on BYU all year is that they haven't been able to beat the good teams. It's a hell of a chance to make a statement at home against Texas Tech. BYU is another one of those teams that tournament placement is going to be massive. It's going to be huge for where BYU gets placed. Can Texas Tech get a clean game out of Christian Anderson is the key there. Because that's the thing. We know Christian Anderson is as talented as all get out. And since Toppin's been out, we've seen him put up big number games in big spots for them. They beat a very good, a team on the good side of the rise, if you will, that was playing good basketball in Cincinnati, 80-68. He goes for 31, 11, and 7. Those that we know Christian Anderson can do that. It's not a question of if he can. But let's look at this. 6 turnovers in the loss to TCU on Tuesday. 7 turnovers in that loss in the game at ASU. He also, in playing 2 good games against Iowa State and Cincinnati, 6 turnovers, 6 turnovers. Christian Anderson has got to hold on to the basketball. They don't have they're not afforded the ability anymore without Toppin there to have their other best player play sloppy basketball. Fortunately for them, it's BYU who doesn't play any defense. That game tomorrow night Saturday night is going to be a really big one for both of these teams. I think it's a big confidence game for Texas Tech because it's not an easy place to play at the Marriott Center. It isn't. But they need Christian Anderson, Texas Tech does, to play a clean basketball game if they're going to get that victory. There's something else going on tomorrow night on the schedule if I just can't remember. Oh, North Carolina and Duke. I'm really interested to see this one. Duke is 17.5-point favorites over North Carolina. And I'm interested to see it for this reason. Carolina doesn't need a statement win. They're going into the tournament. But it's the rivalry of all rivalries. 17.5-point favorites? Well, why? Is it Duke on the war path? Is it Duke trying to avenge their earlier loss? Because Duke doesn't have anything to play for as far as the ACC goes. But Duke's still trying to grab that number one seat. Senior night, Cameron, Carolina. Talk about being in your bag for that script. Obviously, they were going to play Carolina in the last game of the year anyways. But I'm interested to see that environment. It's always a great one, but senior night. You know, we talked about the NBA draft and the depth of this freshman class and how it's going to shape the NBA draft. And I mentioned that, you know, while there's a lot of good players in this draft, there is no generational talent like a Cooper Flagg and a Victor Wembanyama. And T and I were trying to get to this yesterday. We just ran out of time. And somebody said, Cooper's a good player. I don't think he's that great yet. Let's walk this back for a second. Cooper Flagg reclassified. Cooper Flagg was supposed to be in this draft. And if you're not sure of how good Cooper Flagg is still in his rookie year in the NBA, put this in the right perspective. If Cooper Flagg was in this year's draft, he's undoubtedly the number one pick in the draft. So while all these teams in the NBA laughably are trying to just tank and play dumb to, oh no, we're not trying to tank, there isn't that guy in the draft. You imagine this Carolina-Duke game tomorrow night if it was Cooper Flagg and Cam Boozer on the floor for Duke? Oh, that's going to be an incredible, incredible environment. The other part of the reason the spread's 17.5, and I hate this, fortunately it's part of sports, Caleb Wilson has had thumb surgery. He is out for the season for North Carolina. That massively changes what happens to Carolina. And it's got a lot to do with why the spread is 17.5. There's thoughts that they were going to get Caleb Wilson back. Obviously, we know that answer now, and that sucks. Talk about uber talented freaking players, freshmen. 19, 9, and 3 assists, 58% from the floor. We're not going to see him on the floor again, and might not see him again in a Carolina uniform, and that sucks. So it puts a lot of pressure on the rest of Carolina in a hostile environment to get the job done. I don't know, even without Caleb Wilson, though, 17.5 points, man. I'm going to have to do some more digging on that one. Vasar is going to have to be fantastic. Seth Trimble, already been a hero for them a couple of times this year. Going to need a massive game out of them to have any prayer tomorrow night. And then, not that it's a ranked matchup, but we talked about bubble teams this week. And we talked about the teams that need a big finish to the season. Well, our favorite coach to talk about right now, Boss Baby over here, gets a huge win, and a huge win. Like, pounded Nebraska the other day. And the thought was, going into this week, that UCLA had to go at least 1-1 in their 2 games this week. And the tough one was going to be the Nebraska game. Well, they pounded Nebraska. Not that you would have been able to tell with Mick Cronin's comments after the game. Boss Baby here, 12-7, as T pointed out, in the Big Ten. 20-10 overall. They're at the Galen Center, a couple miles down the road tomorrow to take on USC, who's decent, but all kinds of roster nonsense going on there. Chad Baker-Mazara no longer with the team. This is a huge game for UCLA to take themselves out of any bubble conversation because they got the tough win that nobody thought they could get against Nebraska and blew out Nebraska. Rivalry game, not ranked teams, not going to get a lot of attention. It's conveniently placed tomorrow. And I've been watching UCLA play down the stretch here just to watch the ticking time bomb that is Mick Cronin. A lot. This one's very well placed because Duke and Carolina start, I believe, 2.5 hours before that game starts. That game starts an hour and a half before Texas Tech is at BYU. And then your nightcap tomorrow night, if you're just looking for a good reason to have a good time, I guess you could say, well, then you're going to turn on Arizona at Colorado. My God. Arizona only 15.5-point favorites in that one. So we're loaded up. Next week, we're going to dive more into what's going on. We'll get more as most of the big conferences start their conference tournaments next week. But we've already seen some fun stuff, some crazy stuff going on. It is March, clearly, and we love that. The NBA, a couple news and notes from the NBA, and then I'll have my mic drop for the week. And we're going to talk about fashion. Yes, fashion. I'm going to talk to you about fashion. But the NBA last night, we saw a couple of interesting things. We've got a couple of interesting things coming up right now. Los Angeles, the Lakers, at the Nuggets last night. The Nuggets, a team that has really struggled, ironically, at home this year. And they get a big victory last night. They covered the spread. Thank you very much. That was about the only thing I did good in the NBA last night because it got my ass kicked everywhere else. Luka Doncic picks up his 15th technical foul last night, which means he's one away from suspension. The Nuggets, 120-113 winners. There's a couple of things going on with the Nuggets right now. Obviously, we know the Nuggets have not been playing with a full deck for the entire season. Aaron Gordon, we're hearing possibly that he could be making his return in the next game or two. The Nuggets are in action tonight against the Knicks, back at the Ball Arena. Maybe he plays tonight. Maybe it's a couple more games. That'll give him about 15, 18 games, depending on when they reactivate him down the stretch here. And we talked about this on our social channel yesterday. I don't know what we can make out of this Nuggets team and if we're going to really get a great gauge on them until we get to the postseason. So they get a big win last night at home, coming off of, a couple of really poor performances at home. Nikola Jokic last night, triple-double. In related news, water is wet and the sky is blue. He goes for 28, 12, and 13 last night. This Nuggets team is turning the ball over a lot, which is very uncharacteristic for them. 18 turnovers last night, and they let the Lakers back into the game late. Los Angeles came out, outscored them 32-29 in the third. But that Luka Doncic technical, and I don't know if it's just me, but Luka has not looked happy at all this year. At all. Like he's not enjoying the situation one bit whatsoever. Los Angeles in the 7th spot, two games ahead of Phoenix, 5 games still ahead of the Warriors, who are just rat-trapped in their spot. A big win for the Warriors last night in Houston in overtime, knocking off the Rockets. But you can't have Luka Doncic sitting out games suspended because of technical fouls. And I don't know if he really, obviously I didn't hear what he said. None of us did. If you were watching the game, didn't seem very demonstrative. But we know with Luka, he wears your patience thin for a long time, and then he gets popped for one. This is a Laker team this team cannot fall to the play-in tournament. They absolutely cannot. I would get some great humor if it ended up being Lakers and Clippers in the play-in tournament, because I think both of those LA teams are one-and-dones for me. If they even get to, quote, the first round, because we have to do this stupid-ass play-in tournament still. They're flirting with it now. And when you look at the Lakers' schedule down the stretch here, not having Luka in a game down the stretch is a big friggin' deal. Because they don't have the easiest down the stretch schedule here. So in projecting forward, when does he pick up this technical? Well, tonight they play Indiana. Sunday they play the Knicks. Tuesday they play the Timberwolves. Next Saturday they play the Nuggets. Then they're at Houston for back-to-backs. Then they're at Miami, Orlando, and Detroit. They also have games with Cleveland, at Oklahoma City, versus Oklahoma City, at the Warriors, and versus the Suns. And with where they're at, the last thing the Lakers need is no Luka in a game down on that stretch because they're right there. That thing is must-see TV for me in the offseason. I'm fascinated by what happens in Los Angeles. You've got two $54 million players, and neither one of them play a lick of defense, and neither one of them is easily going to give up it's their team in LeBron and Luka. How do you shape a roster around that? This stretch, this home stretch for the Lakers, one of the more important home stretches at the end of a year in the history of the Lakers franchise. I believe that 100%. Because it's going to go a long way to shaping this offseason. Last night, I mean, the Lakers dominated the points in the paint. They got beat in points off of turnovers, even though Denver turned the ball over more times than they did. Nikola Jokic almost had a quad double last night. He had 9 turnovers. I mean, this Denver team, I think, is fascinating because, to me, they're the ultimate wild card. Right now, they sit 5th. They would be matched up with Houston in the first round of the playoffs. Los Angeles, they'd get Minnesota. That's not a good matchup for them. None of the teams ahead of them in the West are a good matchup for the Lakers. The Lakers' best hope is something miraculous happens and somehow they get paired with one of the teams behind them. The problem is the only way that's happening is in a play-in tournament. And this Lakers team does not need any more games. Especially with a hanging suspension of Luka Doncic for the next technical foul. Because you know it's coming. It's just a matter of when. San Antonio last night. We talked about that one. I was on the wrong side of that one. A lot of people were on the wrong side of that one. As they beat Detroit. Again. If you're not taking the Spurs for real, you need to. Well, the Pistons aren't the best gauge. Get out of here with that. The Pistons are the number 1 team in the East. The Pistons play hard no matter what. But what San Antonio has been able to do is something that is the key to beating the Pistons. Slowing down Cade Cunningham. You're not gonna shut him down. You have to slow him down. He had 26 and 8 last night, but if you watch the game, he had to work his ass off for those. So now San Antonio at 45 and 17. They get a 121-106 victory last night. But how do you stop the Pistons? A lot of people are wondering that. Well, it's simple. You have to make life difficult on Cade Cunningham, and that's not an easy undertaking by itself. The other way you beat the Pistons is you beat them in the paint, and San Antonio did that last night, 52-38. Mac mentioned this last week when we were talking specifically about the Spurs and not being sure if the Spurs were ready or not and needing the veterans to have veteran presences on the floor. De'Aaron Fox, 29 points last night. You know, Luke Cornett's never going to fill up a box score and do anything impressive for you, but he does a lot of the little things. Harrison Barnes did not play last night. Again, woke up from a nap. Sounds like something I would pull off. Woke up from a nap with a sore ankle, so they sat him out again last night. He's another guy. Between Barnes, Fox, and Luke Cornett, that's gonna be your dictation of what happens to the Spurs team, who now in the Western Conference is sitting here, you know, in second place, and they're only 3 games behind the Thunder, a team that they've had the Thunder's number this year. You know, if you're not taking San Antonio for real, you need to take San Antonio for real. Houston, as I mentioned, they lose a freaking terrible game to lose if you're the Rockets to the Warriors last night. 115-113 in overtime. Reed Shepherd for the Rockets, 30 points and 6 rebounds. But we're seeing the same thing from the Rockets we've seen all year. And in giving them time to work this out, it hasn't worked itself out. The loss of Fred VanVleet was paramount to the Rockets. The Rockets are now 1-6 in overtime this year, and they've really struggled down the stretch. Why? because they don't really have a point guard. I was shocked that the Rockets didn't do more to bring in somebody. I mean, we just saw Denver. They just picked up Tyus Jones. Kind of ironic. Kevin Durant comes to Phoenix. They don't have a point guard. It doesn't ever really pan out. He goes to Houston to play with a point guard, and unfortunately that point guard gets hurt before the beginning of the year. I don't think I got a lot of faith in this Rockets team. They're not good in clutch time, and they don't win in overtime. Shout out to Houston people last night for the Warriors. LJ Cryer knocking down threes in the city of Houston. That probably brought a tear to people's eyes. And Brandon Pajemski of the Warriors played fantastic last night. He is aggravating as all hell to watch. But the backcourt of the Warriors last night, D'Anthony Melton and Brandon Pajemski, 49 points, 15 rebounds. That's the one thing Brandon Pajemski does better than 90% of the guards in the NBA. This kid can rebound. Guy Santos for the Warriors, 14-6. Old man Al Horford, 17-6. Draymond Green, typical Draymond game. 10 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds, 2 turnovers, a steal, plus 12. Grabbing of an ankle that didn't need to be done. Normal game for Draymond Green. That's a massive win for the Warriors. But again, we talked about the Warriors situation. They're kind of rat-holed in where they're at because nobody behind them is really trying to do anything. So for the Warriors, you're really try and catch the Suns for 7th, and you get to host both of the play-in tournament games, and you get 2 opportunities to go to the playoffs and either get your ass kicked by the Thunder or the Spurs. It is what it is. It's the reality of the NBA situation. The biggest news in the NBA, and I can't wait to see this, for a couple reasons. Number one, because this team has been probably the best surprise in the NBA this year. The Boston Celtics are getting the return of Jason Tatum tonight, which is something we knew was probably going to happen. We weren't sure when it was going to happen. Not sure how it's going to affect them going forward. We've talked about Jaylen Brown. Mac and I both made a solid case, I believe, for Jaylen Brown to be MVP finalist and possibly the MVP depending on how the stretch run handles itself here. But we also talked about this. Peja Stojakovic's Kings team from a few years back. Or it's been more than a few years. You know what I'm saying. Chris Webber was out. The Kings were playing great. Oh, when Webber comes back, this is going to be the year for the Kings. They got worse when Webber got back. What kind of minutes? How much does Tatum play? Does he take the, Robin role to Jaylen Batman Brown this year? People questioning what Tatum's going to say. Let's let the guy get on the damn floor first. And Boston's not going to run him out there and play him 40 minutes. They're playing the Mavericks tonight. It's a little bit of fascination there. Cooper Flagg, if he plays in Boston, close to where he grew up, $197. Shout out Vegas Mac for your ticket prices there. Boston 14.5-point favorites. Another great one tonight, the Heat and the Hornets. The Hornets who are now over 500. That's at the Spectrum Center. That's going to be a scene tonight. Trailblazers, a team in the play-in situation against the Rockets coming off of a bad loss and an overtime game last night. Knicks and Nuggets. Clippers and Spurs, Pacers and Lakers. A couple of things to get across here before I drop my mic drop for the week. You got Roz. I don't know about that one. Because I don't know how far the 49ers are willing to go on Jawan Jennings' contract price. And I can very much see Romeo Doubs fitting the role of Jawan Jennings and saving the 49ers about $22 million. I think Jawan believes he's a number one wide receiver, and I think he wants to go get as close to number one wide receiver money as somebody's going to give him. I think Tennessee is an option there. I thought maybe Buffalo was an option for a little while. I honestly think Carolina is going to make a hell of a push for him, which would be a scary season in Carolina with Coker and with Tetero McMillan, and you add Jawan Jennings to that group. I think Carolina is a real threat to land another wide receiver in free agency this year. I got my balls busted for this. Somebody was watching the other day. I think they were talking about Team Australia, and I was trying to find the guys on the roster, but there you go. There's your update. Australia has defeated Chinese Taipei. This doesn't make for good television here, but I needed a prop that I forgot to grab because I was laughing my ass off at Corey Perry canceling the Lightning's hopes to win the Stanley Cup this year. Still cracking me up. Our guy Marty Smith from ESPN, and this is your mic drop for this week. He posted this tweet last night, and I really enjoyed it. Had a couple of cold ones at the neighborhood pub with my buddies during the overly aggressive banter about Ohio State, Bama, and Notre Dame football. I got all fired up and turned my hat around backwards like Sly and over the top. I'll be 50 in April. What age is too old for a backwards hat? I love this. Absolutely love this. Because I love when people, and this is part of our problem. Everybody's got an opinion on everything that everybody else does. Well, you shouldn't show your tattoos. What do you think I think of that one? You know what? They're mine, and I'll show them wherever the hell I want to. And it just, we see it all the time. And X is typically a cesspool for stuff like this. I got great enjoyment out of this last night. Because when you go through the comments, it was fun banter back and forth. Nobody was being disrespectful. Some people were being a little snarky, and I get it. What age is too old for a backwards hat? Ask the person that's wearing it, because that's the only person it should matter to. You shouldn't wear shorts in cold weather. Who gives a shit? If somebody wants to wear shorts in cold weather, they're going to. We talk about my winter garb all the time. It's a hoodie, flip-flop, and shorts. And usually a scully. A toque, if TJ was here. But what age is too old to wear a backwards hat? When should you not show your tattoos? When should you not have your ears pierced? When should you not wear... Who cares? Seriously, with everything that's going on in the world right now, and in life right now, there's plenty of people that give fashion advice that shouldn't give fashion advice. So the answer to the question, what age is too old for a backwards hat, is there is no answer. I thought this was fascinating. And I love Marty Smith. He is a hell of a follow. One of the comments I saw, and I'm not going to take credit for this because I didn't say it, but I loved it when I saw it. Well, I think it's only appropriate as we sit here that I give you this. We grew up in the Ken Griffey Jr. generation, was the comment that was made. So a backwards hat is acceptable anytime you want to. And a backwards hat is acceptable anytime you freaking so well choose. Let's all just work on being a little more in our own lanes and supportive instead of just wanting to be combative and argumentative all the time. And yeah, I'm part of the Ken Griffey Jr. generation, and I'm going to wear my backwards hat any damn well time I want to. Wednesday night, we're back. 5:30 on the West Coast. 5:30 for you Arizona people because of the time change. Yay! And then Thursday and Friday, lunchtime live, we're going to get you locked and loaded for college basketball and the big conference tournaments. Obviously, we'll be into the thick of the silly season in the NFL with the new league year starting. Closer and closer to opening day on baseball. Follow us on all of our social channels at Mike Arana Show. Everywhere but Snapchat, because we're not 12 and Snapchat sucks. Wear your hat backward. Wear a tank top. Wear flip-flops. Wear jeans in the middle of an Arizona summer. Do you, boo-boo. Enjoy your damn weekend. Let's make some money. We'll talk with you again next Wednesday. You know the drill.